Imagine almost getting killed because of your love for the game. See, footballers are like superheroes, but sometimes they need saving. These are the 7 footballers who are lucky to still be alive. And just wait till you see what happened to Neymar. But first up is Virgil van Dijk. Man, and the time according to him, he looked death in the eye. Van Dijk is one of the best defenders in the world, but it could have all been different because back in the beginning, Virgil van Dijk could have died. See, Van Dijk was playing for Groningen at the time, and he had to undergo an emergency operation on something that was eating him up inside. Van Dijk and his mom decided to go to the hospital and check it out, and that's when the doctors gave him the disturbing news. Virgil is suffering from peritonitis and uremia, and he needs to have surgery immediately. But as Van Dijk got into the stretcher and was getting wheeled away, he started having negative thoughts that he wasn't going to make it. I looked death in the eye. It was a terrible experience. For the first time in my life, football meant nothing to me. It was not important at all. This was all about trying to stay alive. I remember lying in bed, and all I could see were tubes and wires on my body. Damn, man, it must have been tough. Lucky for Van Dijk, he had his mom by his side, and she helped him pull through when he felt like giving up. My mother and I were both praying to God, and to be honest, we were both discussing different scenarios. At one point, I had to sign these documents. It was a will that if I would die in the hospital, part of my money would go to my mom. I was not capable of anything. The worst things went through my mind. Van Dijk, you are my new hero. Not only did he come out successful, but he's also gone on to become a beast and one of the best defenders in the world. See guys, sometimes all you need is mental strength and luck, just like Didier Drogba, after an accident that was so bad it almost took his brain out. Drogba was still repping Chelsea back in 2011 when they were up against Norwich City. Now everyone knows how huge Drogba is, so whenever he was on the ball, the Norwich team had guys clocking him, including the goalkeeper. And this one time as they both went for the ball, Drogba got there first and boom! His entire world was seconds from disaster. Even Drogba knows how lucky he was. I was scared. I couldn't remember anything from after Norwich equalized until I was being rushed to the hospital. I didn't know what was going on. Drogba wasn't capping because according to the doctors and the medical team on ground, he was unconscious for 8 minutes. Damn, the last time I was unconscious was when I saw my 9th grade algebra exam sheet. Drogba's like a warrior, man, and even though he's had many injuries in the past, this one was the worst. I've had some injuries before, a broken leg and a broken arm, but this was the scariest. I had a concussion and a perforated eardrum, which is why I needed time. I was feeling dizzy and couldn't cope with any noise. It was too noisy in my head and I wasn't allowed to fly, but I knew I was lucky to still be alive. Whoa, even he knows he was lucky, and Drogba ain't the only tough number 9 to admit this. Because when Raul Jimenez got knocked a few years back, the entire football world held its breath. Wolves were playing away at Arsenal when it happened. Raul Jimenez and David Luiz were both going up for an air ball when they clashed, and as soon as Jimenez went down, he was knocked out cold. Immediately, the medical team rushed in, and as soon as they got to Jimenez, they knew it was a matter of life or death. They had to bring in an oxygen mask, but Jimenez wasn't responding, and that's when they rushed him to the hospital. The doctors explained what happened on getting there, and the details are scary. Jimenez had suffered a skull fracture. The bone broke, and there was a little bit of bleeding in the brain. It's pushing the brain inside, and if we don't do surgery quick, Jimenez might be brain dead and eventually die. Quickly, the doctors went to work, and as they started the operation, they knew if Jimenez was going to survive, it would have to be a miracle. But lucky for Jimenez, the surgery went on okay, and he survived. They told me it was a miracle to be alive. I don't remember anything from what happened that day. All I remember was going for the ball way up and crashing down into darkness. Whoa, Jimenez's road to recovery was long, man. It took him over a year, and he almost retired from the game. But he had a secret weapon he used to beat the depression, and he's finally ready to share it with the entire world. In the early days, when I started walking again, whenever I was sad, I'd go lock myself inside my room and cry my eyes out. Until one day, I found the link to Mr. Football's YouTube channel, and their content put a smile on my face and changed my life. That's amazing, man. Mr. Football be changing lives. Jimenez now has to play with a protective mask to hide his scars these days, but at least he's lucky enough to play, man. A chance Ryan Mason will never have again. Ryan Mason recently made history by becoming the youngest coach in Premier League history at 28 years old. but it's a record that he wasn't exactly looking forward to, and it's all because of the incident that changed his life. Mason was repping Hull City in a game versus Chelsea when they had a corner, and as soon as he got up to head the ball, he knew his career was over. The medical team didn't waste any time in coming on, but just one look at Mason and they knew they had to rush to the hospital. When Mason got to the CT scanner and went unresponsive, they started the surgery immediately. Mason was feeling pain every day, and it was so bad that he had to put staples and metal plates in his head. Mason tried to get back to playing football after the incident, but the doctors told him that if he tried a head ball again, he could get dementia or epilepsy before he turned 29. Mason had to retire, but at least he was grateful he had the opportunity to still walk again. Ryan is now head coach at Spurs, and he keeps reminding people about how lucky they are to still be alive. Like Jack Grealish. When Jack Grealish was still at Aston Villa, something happened that almost ruined his career. In a match against Watford, Grealish was contesting for the ball when Tom Cleverley accidentally kicked him in the ribs and broke his kidney. Grealish immediately had surgery, and he was about to go into surgery. The doctors told him, "Jack, you could die." Grealish was praying for a miracle, and lucky enough, he got one. The surgery was successful, but Grealish had to miss out for 3 months. But at least Grealish didn't have to watch someone die like Pablo Mari. Mari left Arsenal to join Monza on loan last year, and as he got to the new club, he decided to check out the city a bit. So he went shopping at the mall, but a few minutes later, the alarm rang out, and as Murray turned back to check what was going on, he knew his life was in danger. It was a robbery. The dude was holding a knife, and as Mark returned, he stabbed him. The guy killed someone else, and it was the scariest day of Maris's life. I had to watch someone die in front of me. Lucky for Mari, the injuries he suffered were at his back, and he got his surgery to fix them real quick. Mari was out of action for 2 months, but as he got back to the pitch, he kept playing with a smile on his face, because he knows he was lucky to be alive. Maybe he's blessed, like Neymar. Neymar knows he's a lucky, blessed kid. He even has a tattoo for it. But back when Neymar was a kid, he almost got involved in what people called the Brazilian national disaster. His parents were heading up to the mountains to go visit some family members, and because Neymar was still a toddler back then at 8 months old, they strapped him in a seat and kept him out back. As they got to the hill, the clouds started to change, and it looked like it was just going to be a little rain until the thunder started clapping and the road was getting dark. Neymar Sr. thought he could still drive on and find a way out of it, but pretty soon he couldn't see the road anymore, and just before he could get to a spot to park, he saw the bright lights and boom! They crashed into a nearby truck, and there was blood everywhere. Neymar Sr. was bleeding on his head, and his wife was bleeding on the arm, but the two of them didn't care about themselves because they were only focused on Neymar, so they kept calling out his name, "Neymar, Neymar," but he didn't answer, so they called out again, and still no response. Now they were really scared, and even Neymar's mom was crying. But Neymar Sr. still believed his son would turn out okay, so he prayed for a miracle and went to look out back for him. And lucky enough, he found Neymar in the woods. But as soon as he picked him up, he knew he couldn't celebrate because Neymar had a cut on his head. Quickly he called 911, and they rushed Neymar to the hospital. In there, the doctors told him to pray and promised they'd do everything they could to keep Neymar alive. Now, Neymar was only 8 months old, and having cuts on his head could have led to something else. But then a miracle happened, and they all turned out okay. Even Neymar Sr. knows he and his family are really lucky to be alive, man. I even heard it's because of the incident Neymar changed his lifestyle. From balling out to having secret kids, Neymar's lifestyle is pretty unique. Check the next video to find out more.